It started with a voice that should not have been there. A clipped woman's voice at the top of the hour saying only, "Message follows." Then nothing. Just the carrier humming like a metal wire pulled tight. That was yesterday. Tonight it's me. If you hear my words, you caught our frequency before the next flare scrapes it off the map. This is 6:40 a.m. and 7.490 megahertz shortwave, as long as the tubes keep their glow. My name is Jack Morley. I am inside the old auxiliary studio in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a cinder block room behind a rusted steel door that sticks when the air swells. Time is 10:14 p.m. Eastern, Friday, October 17th. Outside it's 49 degrees by the last working thermometer on the wall, and the wind keeps pulling at the siding, like a kid tugging a sleeve. The night has that strange hush that follows a siren you can still feel in your teeth, and the only steady sound is the fan on the emergency transmitter, and the rain snapping once in a while against the vent above my head. You've stumbled onto a station that was never meant to carry a voice this long. We were supposed to be a relay for weather alerts, baseball scores, church bulletins. We were supposed to tell you who won the high school game and which roads were closed after a truck shed its load by the bridge, and there were sponsors with jingles and a birthday club where the caller would sing off-key, and we all pretended not to notice because it was sweet and because the day still had shape. Now the shape is different. Now the clock hands move like they are pushing through thick water, and every minute is both too fast and too slow. The weather is not a forecast anymore. The weather is the ash that fell over Lancaster this morning, and the cold that should not be here in mid-October, and the light that looks like late afternoon even when it is midday. We stopped getting the NOAA loop from KEC 83 out of State College at 2:07 a.m. Wednesday, and the guy who would call from the highway to say the plows were late hasn't checked in since the second day when the cell towers went dark one after the other, like a line of street lamps blown by the same fuse. People keep asking how it started, and I keep telling them the same thing. It didn't start with a flash. Not for most of us. For most of us, it started with friction. A month of jittery headlines about satellite tests and deep-sea cables cut by anchors. Then those strange GPS jumps that threw trucks off route and made planes circle and circle because the sky above them didn't match the map beneath. We heard about embargoes that hardened into blockades. We heard about drills called at odd hours, where the cameras were kept far back and the statements didn't line up with the pictures. We heard crackling inside the emergency alert system tests, like someone keyed a mic at the wrong time and whispered, "Leave." Monday afternoon, the federal feed pushed a message to a few stations, not all, just a fraction, saying, "Shelter in place pending further." Instruction. And by dinner, it was gone, replaced by the old standby about child abduction in a county that doesn't exist. Tuesday morning, the airport boards froze, the AM band filled with empty carriers, the FM band dulled like a light under a towel. That was when the hairs on my arm stood up, even without the draft. We had a guest scheduled this week, a soft-spoken professor who teaches risk and systems at the college in town. He'd come in before to talk about flood maps and the way roads become rivers in a hurry here. He called me Sunday night and said he could not make Tuesday because his department had been told to pack ready bags for a continuity exercise. He sounded embarrassed, like he was canceling brunch. Half a laugh, half a question. I told him no problem, we could reschedule. He said, "If we don't talk Tuesday, I'll call Thursday." He didn't call. His office phone rings once and cuts. His email bounces. That was the first pebble in the shoe I could not shake out. On the scanner, we heard the hospital run through 3 sets of codes we had to look up. We heard a Medivac helicopter lift off and turn back with negative routing because the tower could not confirm vectors. A police captain from a neighboring county asked on a quiet channel if anyone had eyes on the convoy, and the dispatcher said, "Which one?" He said, "Any." It got colder. Tuesday night. By midnight, the streetlights on Front Street flickered and went to half bright. At 12:17 a.m., the bridge lights on the river cut out as if someone snapped their fingers. At 12:20, the river itself looked wrong, dull and flat, no sparkle of the city on its back. When we sent a text to our engineer asking if the grid was doing a load shed, the message hung on "sending" until the phone gave up. I can keep giving you the breadcrumbs that led to the cliff, but I know the cliff is all you care about now. The cliff happened for some in a single white instant that peeled the paint off cars and drew a hard line on sidewalks where shadows were burned into stone. I didn't see that here. Not yet. What we felt was the punch and the roll after. The sky like scraped steel, the air pressure wrong, the static that made your fillings hum if you stood under a wire. But I have callers who saw more. I have listeners who drove into the orange wound and turned around with their steering wheels shaking in their hands. Before the phones died, I spoke to a man in Newark who said he saw the line of fire draw itself across the docks, like someone lifting a hot wire from oil. He could taste grit without opening his mouth. He said the cranes by the container yard had red halos, and he felt a weird happiness for a second, and then he felt very tired. He said he drove west, and the sunlight fell sideways, and the radio in his dash went from music to the cold tone that used to mean a tornado. He tried 3 stations. They all had that tone. He shut it off and listened to his tires. His name was Daniel. He was 33. He did not sound like a man who cries, and he cried on my line without hiding it. If you're still with me, I'm going to read out the frequencies again because the skips are strange tonight. 6:40 a.m. for those within a few counties if the ground wave holds. 7.490 megahertz on shortwave if the bounce is kind and the night stays dense. The standby backup at 3.215 megahertz sometimes comes alive after midnight for those closer to the ground. I'm using a combiner that was pulled from a shelf labeled "Do Not Touch." I touched it. If you are hearing me fuzzy, move the radio near a window, rotate it slower than feels natural, and if you hear the hum come up, stop right there. That's the sweet spot. The first day, people were angry more than scared. They called and said the government was overreacting, or underreacting, or hiding. They said their gas pumps would not turn on because the network that runs the card readers was down, and the clerk wouldn't take cash because the drawer was sealed until shift change, and the manager was not answering. They said the price of a case of water jumped from $5 to $20 in 2 hours. They said rumors about iodine pills were making the rounds, and you couldn't find table salt anywhere because someone posted a list that confused one with the other. By the second day, that anger shifted. The supermarkets fenced the front doors and let 10 people in at a time. The pharmacy gave out numbers, and then the system that spit out the numbers jammed, and all the numbers meant nothing. The last flickers of cable news turned from talking heads to blank set shots with the camera tilted and a world clock in the corner that stuck at 19:03:52. The crawls kept moving with sentences that never finished. I watched a chyron that read, "White House to address," and it never told me what the White House was going to address. No one stepped to the podium. The seal sat there under the lights like a coin on a felt table. I know you want something solid from me. You want names and shapes. You want me to say with clean words what happened at 1412 Zulu on Tuesday, when the screens in air defense centers flashed and a dozen people made the worst set of choices they'll ever live with. I have notes. I have voices that were not meant to be recorded, and I have margins where I wrote down parts of sentences and question marks. Here is the shape everyone agrees on. There was a gap, then there was a misread, then there was a cascade. There were satellites taken out, deliberately or accidentally, no one can say, and with those eyes gone, the picture on the ground looked 10 times worse than it was for one side, and 10 times better than it was for the other. There was movement at sea that would have been normal in November, but not October, and a burst of traffic in a band that usually stays quiet. Someone interpreted a test as a launch. Someone else interpreted a scramble as a strike. There are stories about a dead man's switch in a capital we don't talk about often, and an if-then chain that did what it was built to do long after the humans in the room stood up and shouted to stop it. I have not been able to confirm that last part. The man who told me is military, or was. He did not say his name, just a call sign that could be real or could be a movie he loves. He knew too much about times I can match to the few reliable clocks we have left. He knew that the EAM traffic on very low frequency lit up around 9 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday like a switch yard. He knew the words launch basket and used them like they have weight, which they do. He said the basket tipped. I will say this because I keep saying it on the hour, and people keep asking again because they want to believe maybe it has changed. If you are downwind of any confirmed strike zone, stay put unless your shelter is not a shelter. If you have to move, move short, not far, and only when the wind has not shifted for a while. If you have a basement, make it heavier. If you have an interior room, make it tighter. Water in sealed containers. Food you can eat without heat. Mask if you must go out. Any mask. Layered cloth better than bare mouth. Keep your clothes by the door and shake them outside before you come back in. Put the cloth you use to wipe your shoes in a bag and keep it away from where you sleep. I know some of you are tired of hearing this. I know you want to go. I know the urge when the walls feel too close. Please listen to me. The first week is the hardest. After that, the dust that can kill you the fastest has fallen where it wanted to fall, and we can start to learn the new shapes together. I have to talk about the silence because it's the thing that keeps people awake. The silence from the places that were all noise not long ago. We have not had an official voice from Washington since the second day. We had a text string from a staffer who has called this station for years when he wanted to plant a quote off the record to push a committee in a direction. He told me on Monday night that the building was standing watch and that there would be a statement in the morning. Tuesday, there was not. Wednesday, his number went green, and then it did not go at all. We caught a shortwave relay from somewhere in the Rockies with a voice that sounded like a quarter of the defense secretary filtered through a bad pipe, saying, "We will not escalate further," which is an odd thing to say if nothing has happened, and then the carrier dropped as if someone kicked a plug. Locally, the state troopers were out the first day telling people to clear the highway shoulders to make room for official vehicles. By the second day, I saw 2 cruisers parked nose to nose on Market Street with no one inside. Driver doors open, like the cars had stepped out for a cigarette. The third day, the advisory about staying off the roads turned into a curfew enforced by a helicopter that circled the Capitol 3 times and then headed south. After dark, the only lights you could see on the West Shore were the candles in windows and the shine of a generator at a building that I think is a data center. They built it to look gentle from the road, with trees, but at night the air above it flickers like a stove. When I drove past at dusk, I saw 4 men in orange vests at the gate, and a fifth man with a long gun. He had the casual stance of someone who has stood with a long gun for too many hours in a row. Here is what I can tell you about the grid. The main set of lines that take power from the nuclear plant to the substations is out by design. They scrammed the reactors, a word we learned from the pamphlets and now say like it's every day, and they are keeping them cold with backup diesel. If you live near 3 Mile Island, you know the sound I mean, that steady, low engine rumble. They say they have enough fuel for days. Days are a funny measure now. The petroleum storage on the river is not pumping. The pipelines can't push because the power to push them is gone. So fuel moves by truck if it moves at all, and the trucks do not move at night anymore because people have learned to follow them. The grid in pockets is alive on local feed, municipal hydro here, a small gas turbine there. Little islands of bright, but islands mean bridges and bridges draw people, and then the bridges become arguments with fists and then with guns. We are getting calls again on the old landline because someone patched copper to copper across 2 buildings and gave my number to the guy who manages the switch. I am warning you now. If your phone works, it may not work later. Don't tell me everything. Tell me enough I can get it on the air and enough that I can call you back if I have a question. If you have a story that could help someone else, this is the moment. I will not use last names unless you tell me to. I will not tell anyone where the shelter with a stockpile is. I will not say which store forgot to lock their back room. I have to keep you safe, and I have to keep us connected. We will walk that line together. We have a caller now. The line is thin, and there is a hum that comes and goes like a bee under a jar. He says his name is Luis. He is speaking from a basement apartment in North Philly, near 5th and Lehigh. He is a delivery driver. He used to run late-night meals when the whole city was still moving at midnight, and the good tacos were only good after 11. He is breathing hard, and he says it is because he ran the stairs to get better signal. He says there were 3 men on his block he didn't know, checking doors, and one of them carried a metal pipe, and when someone yelled from a window, they melted into the dark like rats. He says the night is weirdly bright to the south in a way that is not headlights, not lamps, and people are saying the Navy Yard is a mess of trucks coming and going without lights. He says the corner store tried to reopen this afternoon, and the first 10 customers paid, and the rest just pressed forward, mouths shut, hands full. The owner closed it again, door bent, sign hanging by one chain. He asks if he should leave. I ask him where he would go. He says his mother lives 10 blocks away, ground floor, windows old. I tell him 10 blocks is 10 blocks too far if he does not know what's between, and I tell him to shelter his mother where she is if he can get to her in daylight with a friend who will not let go of his sleeve. He thanks me in that polite way people have when the world is unfair, like I've given him a receipt for a meal he can't afford. The line pops, and he is gone. Luis, if you hear this, I'm going to say it for you again. Daylight, buddy. Daylight and 2 people together. Tape the windows. Put the couch against the door. Water in pots. You can do this tonight with what you have. I have a text slid in through a mesh network some of the ham guys built 3 summers ago. For fun. No one called it fun then. They were precise and a little boring, and they wore hats that said things like ARRL Field Day 2019. They are the reason I can see this message on a little screen no one uses for anything else. The message is from Mara in Belafonte. She says Penn State is closed, truly closed, not remote instruction closed, because the labs shorted after the power wobbled, and the backup that keeps the freezers cold ran dry on diesel by noon. She says her neighbor works at the Met Center and told her the local plume map is not reliable past 6 hours because everything is stacked wrong in the upper air. She says the deer in the woods behind her house came down early and stood in the cul-de-sac at 4 p.m. and looked at the houses like they had questions. She says the kids are trying to play a board game by headlamp and the smallest one keeps asking why the sun went away early. She asks if she should let the kids sleep in the basement. Yes, Mara. Yes. It will be warmer. Put something between them and the concrete. Mats, rugs, even cardboard helps. Keep their routine loose but clear. Brush teeth. A story if you can stand reading. If you can't, make up one about a place you know. The park on a better day. Tell them when the next meal is. If you don't know, say, when the clock gets to the 3. I said I would share what insiders tell me, and I'm trying not to be the guy who feeds rumors into this already bad stomach. But transparency may be the only way we stop panicked mistakes. In the first hours after the blasts overseas and whatever lit up the coast, I heard 3 main theories bouncing between people with clearance badges and people who used to have them. The first theory, decapitation strikes that were mostly successful, but not completely, leaving ladders of command where middle rungs are missing, and the bottom rungs have to guess by looking up at a dark shape. The second theory, a cyber-physical blend that took out sensor nets at the same time as an orbital blindfold, so both sides were punching through fog and convinced the other guy saw better. The third theory, an accident that no one will ever be allowed to call an accident, because too many prideful men would rather call it victory or fate than a string of failed systems and bad timing. The grim part is that all 3 can be true at once. When you network everything, you also connect the ways it can fail. A man from Carlisle called 2 hours ago. He would not give a name, just said he advised at a place where they study radiological emergencies. He said the fallout patterns people are reposting from old Cold War maps are close enough to guess but not good enough to trust, because the targets were different, and the yields were different, and the ground conditions tonight are their own kind of weird. He said the best thing you can do if you are within 100 miles of any plume is to stop inhaling the news and start measuring your air. He said a cheap Geiger counter is better than none, and if you don't have one, you can make an air sampler by pulling a paper towel through a box fan and checking it twice a day for grit. He said, window wells are your enemy, and I wrote that down big because I'd never thought about that. He said, trust your ears more than your screen. If you hear a distant pop like a truck tire every few minutes, that's not a tire. That's something hot settling or a transformer failing after holding on for too long. He said, wear shoes inside for now. He said, sweep toward one corner and never raise dust. He sounded tired enough to fall apart, but his words were like nails you can hang a picture from. I promised radio realism, not because it makes for good listening, but because it might save a life. On our end, the carrier drifts a little as the line voltage wobbles. You may hear my voice pitch strange for a second. That is not your radio dying, though it might be, so don't smack it. The emergency tone you sometimes hear under me is not an alarm for a specific place, not anymore. The tone is the system's heartbeat bleeding into open space. Think of it like hearing your neighbor's music through a wall when both of you are too quiet. If you have an old battery radio with a telescoping antenna, try lowering the antenna halfway. Sometimes too much metal makes the skip worse. On shortwave, the 41-meter band is crowded with people trying to be heard at once. If the band sounds like a parking lot with every car idling, wait 5 minutes and try again. The Earth is still turning. Even now, the ionosphere breathes. I'm going to tell you something personal now, because I promised I would not hide behind a calm voice forever. At 6:30 tonight, I walked out to the loading dock to check the generator, and the sky to the southeast had that thin orange lid that we have learned to fear. The river was quiet, not because no one was on it, but because the water itself was not talking. I could hear the low note of distant engines from the interstate even though the traffic is a rumor now. I felt this sudden smallness, like I was a boy in a big store who looked up and could not see his mother. And for a full minute I thought, I can't do another night of this. I can't fill the space between the static and the silence with just this mouth and these hands. Then I went back inside, opened the battered locker we never clean out, and found the old baseball cap my son left here the day he visited. Green brim, bent wrong, a stain on the front where he pressed his thumb. I put it on. It didn't make the room warmer. It didn't bring the city back. It did make me stand up straight. Maybe you have something like that. A sweater, a keychain, a photo, a salt shaker from a beach lunch you don't remember paying for. Put it where you can see it. We need anchors now. We lost one of our own this morning. Her name was Carla. She ran the board on weekends and always left a note if the coffee pot was off, so no one would worry about a fire. She stepped outside after dawn to call her sister, landline, because that was still alive. And she didn't see the broken glass by the door, where someone had tried to pry it at midnight. She slipped, went down on her side, cracked something in her hip you could hear. We moved her to the couch in the lobby, because the hospital is a hope more than a place now. We gave her the good blanket, the one without holes. By noon, she was fevered from the pain. By 3, she calmed and told me about a birthday party where the cake was lopsided and perfect. At 5, she stopped talking, and at 6, she stopped. We wrapped her in the good blanket, and we did not make a plan. I am telling you this because you should know that even in this, we try to be gentle. When you have to make a hard call tomorrow, make it like someone is watching who loves you and will remember the way you did it. We have a fragment from across the river. A man named Eric in Camp Hill says the grocery store at Trindle and 21st has boarded up the front, but if you knock twice on the side door and say you have an infant, they will let you in to swap for formula. He says do not be loud. He says they take canned goods and trade and batteries, and that they turned away a guy with a pocket full of jewelry, because it is not that kind of world tonight. He says a woman named D is making a list of names of anyone with medical skills, and that she has a pen tied to her wrist with a shoelace. He says she looks like a baker, but talks like a nurse. If you go, go in daylight. Go kindly. And if you lie about the infant, I hope your conscience keeps you up, because we will need mercy later, and you are spending it now. We got a messy report about martial law in pieces, not from any one mouth. What we know, the guard is on the streets in the bigger cities, and they are under orders to keep people from moving in groups after dark, and from approaching any critical site. In some places, the guard is home because home is not safe. In others, they are set up on the lawns of buildings they never thought they'd sleep near. There are roadblocks on some ramps with sawhorses and flares that barely burn. Most of the men at those blocks are tired and want to go inside. If you meet them with open hands. They are scared of you, like you are scared of them. We do not need enemies who could be neighbors. That is a lesson old as fields. I'm going to log locations we keep hearing in case someone hears their place and breathes easier or stiffens to act. Pittsburgh, static, and then a voice midday saying, Keep to the valleys, which I hope is advice and not a curse. Baltimore. Harbor dark, sirens and bursts. A woman named Shay who said the water looks sick and she is leaving at first light by bike with 2 kids. Philadelphia. Scattered. New York. The radio clutter is a tangle and I can't make truths out of it. A man from Yonkers said he saw the city from a hill like a lantern with a blanket over it. Boston. A ham in Quincy said there is a convoy of school buses moving inland. If you see them, do not crowd them. They have a plan you are not part of. Washington. Silence, where the official channels should be, and a volunteer voice from Tacoma Park, who read psalms when his batteries were dying because he did not know what else to do with the last of his juice. I am not a believer the way I was taught to be, but I listened. Because sometimes you listen because someone is speaking, and that is rare enough. If you're taking notes at home, here is a short list of the things that still work more often than they don't. Gravity. Kindness in small doses. The way a pot of water can become safe if you get it rolling hard for a few minutes. The habit of counting. Cans, batteries, candles. The trick of putting the heaviest books where the wall meets the floor to make a quick shield when you can't pour concrete. The habit of checking on one neighbor, then 2, then having the 2 check on 2 more. The way a city block becomes a village after 5 days. If you don't let the worst person on it set the rules. I am not telling you this because I am a guru. I am telling you because I am looking at a whiteboard where we write what we know, and the right side is blank, and the left side has boil water if, from outside faucet. Wear shoes, and don't light candles near curtains. And I want to add one thing tonight that makes you breathe better. I got a scratchy contact on 40 meters from a man in Western Maryland who says he has access to a university reactor that was shut down properly and is stable. He said the staff have set up a station to check people for hotspots with old equipment pulled from a locked cabinet. He said if you are within a short drive and you can make it in daylight with little exposure, it might be worth getting scanned. He said, "Don't come all at once and don't bring groups." He said, and I quote, "Tell them to act like the floor is thin and we all want to keep living in this house." That sentence woke me up inside. The floor is thin and we all want to keep living in this house. We have to talk about water, not the bottles. You know about the bottles. You know they go faster than you think, and that 1 gallon per person per day is the line people repeat, because it's easy to remember and hard to maintain. I mean, the water that runs, or ran, or might if you beg the pipes. The city has told no one anything official, because the city is doing triage with dry hands. But plumbers know things. There is a guy named Rich who called and said the reservoir on the hill can gravity feed some neighborhoods until it can't. And he said the rusty brown you are seeing is both harmless and not your friend. He said fill tubs until they look like weak tea, and then let the sediment fall for an hour and pour the top into pots and boil it hard and pour it into the cleanest thing you have. He said, toilets are a luxury you can still have if you pour a bucket in fast. He said, do not pour slow. He said, you won't like what slow does. He said, don't flush every time unless you must. He said, you will get good at this. Rich, thank you. If you're listening, drop another tip if you can spare it. Another message through the mesh. This one from a nurse named Karina in York. She says they are running a quiet clinic in a church basement 2 streets south of Market with no sign, by appointment only, for wound cleaning and infections and baby checks. She says they are trading care for supplies, but they will not turn away an infant or an old person. She says someone brought in a man with burns from his own generator, and she wants me to remind people not to run them inside, Not near windows, not under windows, not right next to where you sleep. She says the carbon makes you soft and sleepy and then takes you. She says they need zinc oxide for babies, if anyone has it in the back of a cabinet. If you do, wrap it well and leave it at any of the drop points we listed yesterday. I'll read those again at the bottom of the hour. I'm hearing the low rumble that means the generator wants more to drink. We have 2 barrels. We have more than some and less than others. I hate the way I've started to count in barrels like a farmer in a drought. I used to count in stories. The time my father taught me to use a radio. The time my son fell asleep in the car and I drove an extra 40 minutes so he could keep dreaming. The time my wife laughed so hard at a joke I can't remember that she cried. The stories are still here. They are not gone. They are just quieter under the numbers. Maybe tonight, when you have done the things you have to do, and the kids are down, or the dog is finally lying with his chin on his paws, tell someone in your house a story that does not make the room smaller. Tell them about a day by water. Tell them about a light that came in through blinds and made stripes on the floor. Tell them about a song that made your chest warm in a better season. We are not only the fear. I have one last call before we hit the top of the hour, and I give the essential list. It's from a man named Abdul in Allentown. He says his mother is on oxygen. The tank is half. The place where he gets refills is dark, and the door is chained. He has a small generator, but the neighbor said it is too loud and it draws the wrong kind of interest. He is crying because he has done the math, and the math is mean. I ask him what kind of machine his mother uses, and he tells me the model number, and I write it down and show it to the ham in the other room, who knows power, like I know chords. The ham says that machine can run on 12 volts if you have the right cable and a deep cycle battery like from a boat. He says a car battery in a pinch. He says, don't run it till it dies. Keep it between half and full if you can. Abdul says he thinks the old hardware store has a marine section, but he is not sure. I tell him to go at dawn with a note signed by me if that helps. And I say the words out loud, so anyone at that store who is listening will know this is not theft. This is triage. This is a son trying to keep his mother's chest moving. If you are at that hardware store, and if you have keys, and if you have a heart, please let him in. He will bring something back for you, because that is how we are going to live. Now the essential list. I know you've heard parts of this before. I'm going to say it again, because our brains are tired and we forget, and because someone just tuned in and thinks this is a movie they will wake from. It is not. Here we go. Stay inside if you can, especially the first days. Seal windows where you feel a draft. A towel is a seal. A garbage bag and tape is a seal. Don't be fancy. Be thorough. Water. Put it aside in anything clean. Food. Eat the cold stuff early, the cans later, and if you open a can, eat all of it or share. Fire. Never inside if you can help it, and if you must, then with the best vent you can find and a person watching. Clothes. Shake them outside before you come back in and keep the shoes by the door. News. Listen, don't watch. Screens will make you chase ghosts. Radios will bring you voices. Community. Make a list of the nearest 10 doors and check 2 each day. Notes. Write them with big letters and tape them where a person walking by can read without slowing. Health. Wash hands in a bowl and use the same water twice, and then pour it outside at the same spot. Light. 1 room at night, dark windows, a blanket over the gap. Tears. Fine. Anger. Fine. Meanness. Not fine. Save it for the firewood that won't catch. I can feel the room dip. The line voltage is sagging and the transmitter is pulling back, like an animal lowering itself to the ground to make less of a target. If I cut out, I'll come back when the generator stops sulking. If I don't come back, try the shortwave again at the half hour. Try 3.215 after midnight. If all you get is hiss, wait 10 breaths and try again. I am going to keep going, because when you stop talking in the middle of a sentence, people hear ghosts. I promised you my own arc, and I am somewhere between resolve and a kind of soft despair that tastes like the end of a long drive when the gas light has been on too long and the exit signs keep promising food that isn't there. The resolve is simple. I have a room with walls. I have a microphone that still bleeds my words into the wire. I have a list of names, and I will not let them become only names. The despair comes like weather, then leaves when someone says a small brave thing, like a kid's voice on a stair, asking if they can be the one to hold the flashlight. If you feel the despair coming, give yourself a task with edges. Boil water. Count batteries. Write your address on the inside of your forearm in little letters. Then call me. Then tell me one thing you did today that made tomorrow less cruel. I'm going to stay on another hour if the fuel holds and the tubes don't crack. After that, I'll sleep in the chair with my hat over my eyes and my phone on my chest like a stone. At dawn, I'll check the roof for the ash that looks like frost, and I'll shake the mat, and I'll write your names bigger on the whiteboard, and I'll say them out loud before the first report, because names are the one thing the static can't dissolve if you refuse to let it. This is 6:40 a.m. and 7.490 megahertz, Harrisburg Auxiliary Studio, the station that keeps breathing when the other ones hold their breath. My name is Jack Morley. It is 10:57 p.m., and the wind is steady from the northeast, and if you listen closely, you can hear the wires hum like they did back when the city was bright. If you can hear me, you are not alone. If you can talk softer than the fear and louder than the silence. I'll be here. It's past midnight now. The red light above the mic keeps flickering like it's thinking about giving up. The storm outside hasn't moved. It's just hovering. Low clouds lit from below by what used to be cities. The rain has that thick, heavy sound, like it's falling through ash before it hits the ground. I can smell metal from the vent. This is Jack Morley, still broadcasting out of the auxiliary studio in Harrisburg. The signal's weaker tonight. You might hear me fade in and out like a dream you can't quite hold on to. If you can hear this, stay tuned, stay calm, stay human. That's the only job we have left. Earlier tonight, I tried scanning the bands again. AM, FM, shortwave, even the ham frequencies I used to joke about. There's not much out there. The strong ones are gone, and the weak ones whisper like ghosts. But for the first time in a day and a half, I caught something. An old emergency beacon from out west. It wasn't one of ours. The call sign was faint, but I think it came from a small airfield outside Columbus. A recorded voice, male, American accent, said, "Runway destroyed. Fuel gone. Shelter available for 22. Repeat, runway destroyed. Fuel gone. Shelter available for 22. Then static. Then nothing. No coordinates. No follow-up." That's how most things sound now. Half a message. Half a life. Earlier today, people around here started noticing the birds. There aren't many left. You can hear them in the morning, but they don't fly far. They just move from wire to wire, jittery. They say animals sense things before people do, but I think they're just faster at adapting. I saw a raccoon digging through the trash pile behind the station in broad daylight. Didn't even look up when I stepped outside, We're all just trying to outweigh the noise. Let me tell you what I know about the world beyond this frequency. The interstate south of here, what's left of I-83, was jammed yesterday. People sleeping in their cars, engines off, blankets over windows. Some of them thought they could get to Maryland, but the bridges near York are barricaded now. No one's saying by who. A caller from the West Shore told me men in old army trucks set up checkpoints. No insignias, no state plates, no IDs. He said they only waved through vehicles with paper tags taped to the windshield. Tags marked essential transit. That phrase keeps popping up. Essential transit. No one knows what it means. Another message came through on the ham relay earlier. It was from a technician at a substation near Pittsburgh. He said the blackouts aren't just from damage, they're being ordered. Rolling shutdowns to conserve grid stability for priority sectors. He said he saw a list once in a control room before they evacuated. Defense, medical, data. Not homes, not towns, not us. I'm not angry at him. He said he stayed as long as he could before the last feed went dark. He sounded like a man apologizing for gravity. We keep hearing rumors about the coasts. One says a carrier strike group never made it back. Another says a city we all know by heart is gone. But there's no proof, just light that shouldn't be there. If you're near a body of water and the tide looks wrong, don't go close. Salt air carries things you can't wash off. I had a caller earlier, a young woman named Avery from near Altoona. She said she was with her grandparents when the second wave of warnings came through. They thought it was another test, until the ground shook and the air turned electric. She said her granddad told her to unplug everything and move into the storm cellar. They've been living down there ever since, sharing a radio and a pack of crackers. She said the last time she went above ground, the sky was pale gray even at night, and her dog wouldn't come out of the barn. She asked if the rest of the country looks the same. Avery, if you're still listening, yes, it does. Everywhere looks the same now. I'll be honest, I don't know what day it is anymore. The clocks don't match the light. The days blend together into a long hum. My generator says it's been running for 72 hours, but that can't be right. I keep forgetting to eat until I start shaking. I found an old can of peaches this afternoon in the break room. Ate them slow, like gold. When the first strike hit overseas, I remember thinking, they'll never let it go this far. That's what everyone thought. Diplomacy, deterrence, all those words we use to make ourselves feel safe. But words don't shield against heat. Words don't make the sky blue again. We still don't know who fired first. Some say it was a glitch. Others say it was deliberate. Maybe it doesn't matter. The result's the same. 1,000 small endings scattered across the map. Around 8 p.m., I got a call from someone who claimed to be military. Didn't give his name, just a unit code. Said they were operating a temporary communications post in the Appalachians. He said they'd intercepted partial transmissions, suggesting more detonations were contained to the northern hemisphere. Contained. That's the word he used, as if continents have walls. Then he told me something I can't stop thinking about. He said, "We're not just fighting radiation. We're fighting misinformation. And the misinformation is winning." He hung up before I could ask what he meant. You'd think, with everything collapsing, people would be honest by now. But even now, lies are cheaper than comfort. Let me read something before the signal fades again. It's a message someone slid under the door here this morning, before I woke up. Handwritten, shaky. It says, "Jack, don't stop broadcasting, even if no one answers, even if it's just you. It helps knowing someone is still saying something real. There was no name, just a drawing of a radio tower under a gray sun. Whoever you are, thank you. I'm not going anywhere. I think I can hear another transmission faintly on the 3.215 band. Can't tell if it's human or a relay. I'll try to patch it through soon. Until then, if anyone's still out there, I'll read out tonight's shelter list. These are the last confirmed locations from before the grid went dark. The old mine shafts outside Wilkes Bar, 3 entrances sealed, 1 open near Laurel Run. A church basement in York run by volunteers, limited food, open door. The high school in Carlisle, reportedly taken over by medics. They're low on antibiotics, but still taking injured. And here, the Harrisburg Auxiliary Studio. We have 2 rooms, 1 generator, and space for maybe 4 more people. If you're near, come quietly. Bring what you can carry, but don't bring your anger. There's no room for it here. Time check, 12:42 a.m. Temperatures drop to 43 degrees. The rain hasn't stopped. The world feels like it's holding its breath. I'll stay live until the generator runs out or the signal gets cut again. You're listening to 640 AM and 7.490 megahertz shortwave. This is Jack Morley, still here, still breathing, still waiting for a morning that doesn't come too early or too late. If you're alive, write down this frequency. It might be the last one that remembers your name. It's 2:08 a.m. now. I can't sleep, so I'm still here. The room feels smaller tonight. The concrete sweats, and every sound echoes too long. The clock ticks slower than it should. The rain finally stopped, but the silence that came after it is worse. There's a kind of pressure in the air, like the sky's waiting for permission to fall. I've been picking through what's left of the broadcasts. Most of them are gone, but a few keep repeating in loops, half phrases, truncated warnings, automated voices with words missing. One of them, maybe from Ohio or Indiana, plays a line every hour. Do not approach light sources. Do not. Then static. Always cuts right there. It's been playing for 2 days straight, like whoever recorded it couldn't finish the thought before the world took their breath. There's something new happening with the airwaves, too. The hams are saying there's interference, not from solar activity this time, but from ground-based sources. Some kind of jamming that's too organized to be an accident. They think it's coming from underground transmitters or mobile units. No one knows who's running them. One operator from Delaware said he picked up faint Morse repeating "stay down" across 4 frequencies. Nobody's sure if it's a warning or a threat. At 1:23, I went outside to check the antenna line. The moon looked wrong again, half hidden by high haze that glows instead of moves. You can smell the river from here. It's gone sour, like algae and metal mixed. Every time I go out there, I think I'll hear traffic or a plane or anything that sounds human. But there's nothing. Just the wind scraping leaves across the asphalt. The quiet feels heavy enough to break. Someone left a message on the emergency phone line about 30 minutes ago. Said his name was Caleb, calling from somewhere near Reading. He used to work for the State Emergency Management Office. Said he and a few others have been trying to get through to FEMA, but the last open channel shut down late this afternoon. He said the higher-ups evacuated days ago. Northwest. Probably toward the bunkers near Mount Weather or Raven Rock. But no one's heard confirmation since the first detonations on Tuesday. He said, "We've got people waiting for orders that aren't coming." He sounded wrecked, like a man who's been holding something too heavy for too long. Before the line dropped, he told me this: "If anyone still believes help is on the way, tell them it isn't. It's just us now. Then the hum swallowed him. I've been turning that sentence over in my head. It's just us now. I think it's true. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how rebuilding starts, by realizing no one's coming to fix it for you. Earlier, I wrote down a few of the incoming reports from shortwave operators. I'll read them now in case someone recognizes their area. Lancaster County, a ham called Red Fox, says the sky glowed purple for 5 minutes around 9 p.m., then faded. Possible residual ionization. No audible detonations. Light winds moving east. Scranton. Unconfirmed reports of National Guard units escorting convoys south on I-81. Civilian vehicles turned back at the Dunmore exit. Baltimore. Multiple fires visible near the harbor. Heavy smoke drifting inland. One signal said, chemical, but that could mean anything now. Western Pennsylvania. A faint emergency tone followed by the phrase containment breach, repeated 3 times, then silence. If you're near those places, keep your masks tight, keep your heads down, and if the air smells sweet, move fast. Sweet air isn't safe anymore. I've been reading through my old station logs to stay awake. Before all this, I used to complain about dead air. I'd panic if 10 seconds went by without a song, a voice, a jingle. Now dead air's everywhere, and I'm trying to fill it one breath at a time. When the strikes began, everyone assumed the East Coast would vanish first. But it's not that simple. The explosions were selective, strategic, some said. Others said random. Maybe a mix of both. There were patterns that made no sense. Cities spared, towns leveled, rural silos burning while urban skylines still stood like ghosts. One military analyst I spoke to before the blackout said the real targets weren't cities. They were command nodes, satellite links, and data corridors. Kill the nerves, he said, and the body stops moving. That's what it feels like. The world's nerves are cut, and we're all waiting for the next impulse that'll never come. The radiation levels here are still low, but that doesn't mean safe. Dust's getting thicker. The filter vents hiss every few hours, and when the wind shifts, it leaves a gray film on the windows like frost. I've been taping them tighter, but it keeps finding ways in. About an hour ago, I found a note in the hallway pinned under a mug. Someone must have left it during the last shift before we lost everyone. It said, "If the lights go out, don't waste the batteries. Let the dark be what it is." That one stuck with me. Maybe it's good advice. We got another call just now, breaking through static. Woman's voice, trembling, Midwestern accent. Said her name's Janine. She's calling from a place she thinks is near Cleveland, though she hasn't seen a map in days. She said the sky turned red last night. Like a bruise, her words. Said she hasn't seen her husband since he went to look for diesel 3 days ago. Said the neighborhood's empty now except for one family who burns plastic at night to keep warm. She asked me if she should stay put or start walking west. Janine, if you can hear me, stay. I know the walls feel like they're closing in, but outside's worse. Wait for daylight, and if the air feels heavy, don't open the door. If you have mirrors, cover them. They reflect light you don't want. And keep something to write on. Memory fades faster in the quiet. It's strange what the brain holds on to. There's a cup of instant coffee on the console, cold now. I keep staring at it like it's proof that something normal once existed. Every few minutes, I get flashes in the distance, soft, white pulses beyond the tree line. Could be transformers blowing, could be something else. Hard to tell anymore. I count seconds between flash and echo. Sometimes there's no echo at all. A friend of mine, back when phones still worked, told me the Pentagon used to have a word for this phase of collapse: silent continuity. When the chain of command still exists on paper, but not in practice. When everyone's technically alive, but nothing moves. That's where we are now. The silent part of continuity. I'm starting to forget what day it is. My notebook says Friday, but it feels like Sunday stretched across a week. Time loops when there's no sunrise worth trusting. Before we lost connection, one of the university physicists called in. He said something that scared me more than the news. He said the radiation levels are the least of our problems. He said the atmosphere's changed, that the ionized particles are scattering sunlight differently, cooling the surface faster than predicted. He said the world might enter a nuclear dusk long before fallout kills us, a winter without snow, just endless twilight. He said it in a voice that didn't sound like science anymore. It sounded like grief. And maybe that's what this is. The longest dusk in human history. I don't want to end this segment on despair, so I'll tell you something small. Just before I went live again, I heard a sound out back. Soft footsteps, deliberate. I almost didn't check, but curiosity won. It was a boy, maybe 12, wrapped in a tarp, holding a flashlight low. He said his name was Eli. Said he heard the signal from 2 blocks over and followed it. Said his parents told him to find the voice that doesn't sound afraid. I let him in. He's asleep now, curled up under the desk with a blanket that smells like dust. He's breathing, slow, steady. It's the first human sound in this room in 2 days. Maybe that's what keeps the signal alive. Small breaths in the dark. I'll stay on the air as long as we have power. I don't know what's left of the world out there, but I know we're still part of it, if only by the sound of this frequency cutting through the static. This is Jack Morley, transmitting on 640 AM and 7.490 megahertz shortwave. If you can hear me, you're alive. If you're alive, that's enough for tonight.